You might turn your microphone on. So sorry about that, Kaylin. Sorry.
I forgot. So I would like to just make an update. We are actually going to reserve the discussion for the vision to the end of the meeting so that potentially Joanna can join us. So we'll start by seeing if there are any public comments.
On oral communications.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did anyone have any updates to the minutes? Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
If we do a voice vote, we'll use the system in a couple of months. But all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, motion approved 4-0. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. On to the new member handbook.
Where is it?
I don't know. I think it might be. No. So this was the list that John had come up with. I think he sent it out to everyone.
Zach, there's no way to pull it up, Zach, from the previous meeting?
I could look and see, but are you referring to the
Handbook.
handbook? Yeah,
The one pager.
the one pager. It should be actually. I could pull it up from the last meeting. One moment.
While he's doing that, maybe we can. I got a hard copy over here. Here.
Oh, thank you.
That's it.
Yes, this is it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we just wanted to revisit this, right, John?
Okay, what I'm looking at that I sent out to all the trustees has more things on it than this one.
Okay.
There's like 2 or 3 things more. So I guess we can you. This is what we had at the last meeting, correct? And I sent out an email with an attachment to all the trustees about a week later that we were going to discuss at our last meeting, but we left it off the agenda just because there was so much on the agenda and this wasn't time sensitive. So unless we can find that, I guess this is going to...
Did that email? Does anyone want to forward it to myself? I might be able to pull it up.
Okay.
Let me see if I got it. I just forwarded it,
Okay.
Zach.
And it'll take me a few minutes to get it loaded onto that computer. So if you want to go to item number 3, and we can come back to that while I get the other one.
Thank you. Okay, so strategic plan outreach update. John, did you want to give an update on that?
Sure. Okay. The 10 focus groups were conducted between January 10th and the 19th. We had to postpone some of them the next week because the Omicron came up and turned us from all live to mostly Zoom, all within a week. And I think staff did a really good job of making the adjustment to that. We've got lots of input. The last 2 Spanish focus groups conducted by Education Compact, all the results are still being translated into English, and they're shorthanded. We're hoping to have that done before the end of this week, and then we'll start the review process with the committee and hopefully be able to at least digest it and by the end of this month. And if there's any further questions that come out of that where we need more detail, we can start that process then.
Great, and so I think the plan moving forward then is once we have all of that information and we've synthesized it, then we're going to meet with the committee, and go over the results, and then that's when we would start the actual planning process. Our suspense for that is June, right, John?
The plan is to have all the stakeholders, so to speak, which would be ourselves, LSNS, the library staff here, city, and Friends of the Library, Library Foundation, have everyone arrive at a consensus with everyone as to what the plan is going to be, and to have that whole thing finished and outlined and fleshed out by June. If for any reason, at this point we're ahead of schedule for the original schedule we made well over a year ago. But if there for any reason this requires some more time, I'm not really that worried. This is a 5-year plan, and if we started in August instead of July 1st, I don't think that's gonna hurt us. So that's where we are.
So I think what we can try to do is by the March library board meeting, hopefully have some major findings to present. So that way everyone here can see what the major findings were. Yeah, great.
John, I think you're really right about the timing is not as critical as the product. And so if it takes a month or more, I think we should certainly be patient.
Sorry, that is one thing that we might need to get clarity on because it is part of the LSNS contract that it will be completed by a specific month or date. So I will find out on that and get back to you guys, but that is something just to keep in mind as far as.
That's good.
I don't think there's a problem with the contract. You can take a look at attachment A, but I didn't find anything that would, it actually called for updates to the existing plan, but this plan itself and the way we started it was never in the contract. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. And those people, LS&S have been wonderful to work with. And I can't imagine them having a problem with if things get extended.
Yeah, I want to make sure with Debbie, just,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep, that makes great sense. We don't want anyone to, not meet their commitments. Okay, shall we discuss the checklist? Sure. Or Virginia, did you have anything else? No? Okay, great.
Okay, this is based upon the input that we had after looking at the checklist in January. And this is what I had written down. If anybody has any input, let's discuss it.
I would recommend that in the list of board members' contact information that we also include key members such as Zach, Joanne, Katie, and Dara.
That's good.
Okay, which item is that?
That was item number 2.
Okay, so, all right.
I'll take notes, John.
All right, good. Anything else? Okay, well, our plan was to keep it short and simple and something that could be easily taken care of by the Per item 1, the president will assign a current trustee as mentor to the new trustee or trustees and will ensure that all orientation checklist items are completed.
So then, John, the responsibility would fall to the mentor to amass this information?
It would fall to the mentor to make sure, yes,
That the person gets all?
yes.
Okay, great. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
And the president can assign themselves to be the mentor.
I don't see why not.
Okay, that works.
Ron, you're the history here. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I would rather, instead of leaving it up to each mentor to gather all these things, I thought we were going to maybe have some kind of a loose leaf notebook or something that we could hand them, and then we still need the mentor. I'm not advocating getting rid of the mentor, but I think if we had something, so it's, because if you have 5 different board members mentoring people, you're going to have discrepancies, where if you have a handbook to go by, I think it would be better. So that's what I thought was the intent. Maybe I was wrong.
I was under the same assumption that this was creating the handbook,
Okay.
which we could easily make electronic.
Sure, but how do you want to address that in this document? In other words, how do we spell that out? I'm all for it. That sounds good, but what's the best way to spell it out?
Well, I think you just created the index here. So we would just go down this list and create a handbook.
Do we want to, where do we want to house the handbook? Oh, okay.
I was going to say, if you want, you could house the handbook with the city clerk's office. I send a generic handbook to all commissioners after
Right.
they're appointed, so I could just include this as an attachment to future trustees.
So would it also be the current president's responsibility to make sure the handbook's up to date, but delegating the work or asking for help?
I think that's yep, I think that's great.
The only other thing that I would put in here, but I don't know how to do it, is I think it's really what we did in the school business is we did some work with boardmanship, because a lot of people have never been on a board. And it's very good for them to understand that they don't have the power to do anything as an individual. They are part of a group. So the word boardsmanship is what we used a lot, but I don't know where you would put that, and there's not anything really in writing. There's probably all kinds of stuff on the internet, but that would be the only thing I thought of that would be in addition to this.
I have seen a board 101 document placed in the handbook before. It would be easy to find.
Okay, so we add that, for lack of a better word, a boardsmanship document as one of the line items. Okay,
I think it would be good.
yeah, makes sense.
Okay, do we want to vote on this? Do we need to vote on it?
I think we should.
Okay,
Yeah, be safe.
Well, I would move approval of the orientation checklist with the changes we've added that that you brought in, and then the boardsmanship. Do you want to put that under review of the Brown Act with the city clerk and boardmanship, or a separate item?
Separate items. I
Separate
think.
item?
Yeah.
okay. Is there a second? Great,
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion approved 4-0.
great.
To wrap this up, did we decide on how the handbook would be created?
I think that we decided it was the president's role to amass the information that goes into the handbook and then to work with Zach to get the handbook made.
Okay, just let us know if you need help.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to give myself till April to do that, for when either we're here or 2 new people are here.
Well, if 2 new people are here, you won't have to worry about it.
how funny. I'll start collecting everything now, though. Okay, great. I think that, I think we want to go to the director's report now.
Did you want to do the trust fund review first, or do you want to do the
Yes,
director's
actually,
report?
let's do the trust
Okay.
fund review first. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's me again. I got answers to all my questions, which basically, we have the budgeted expenditures basically look at as a checkbook. And we have a certain balance in there that we've already been authorized to spend. All we have to do is vote on it. Most of these are many years, or if not decades old, and I'm not sure if they properly represent what we should be looking at now, but due to all the other things we have on our plate for the next couple months, strategic plan, the vision, all that, there's nothing pressing here. I would say that out of the 7 budget expenditure things on here, we could probably reduce it to a smaller number with broader, a broader expanse of what the money could be used for, and potentially eliminate some of these or reduce them. But the process requires us to go back, as I understand it, through as part of the CapEx process with the city and the council, which is March, April, May. And this is not the March, April, May we want to do that. And since there's nothing time sensitive, we've spent, I believe, over 3 years. We bought some furniture, I think, the first year we were on the board. And we have the screens that were purchased this earlier this fiscal year, and that's it.
Did we do the book drops out here as well?
I think you guys did. I think you bought the book drops. I think you paid for the new digital signage, which are the TVs and computers.
Yep.
You also approved, I think, somewhere around like $8,000 last year for some, or maybe it's 2 years, I'm sorry, it might have
The
been 2 years ago.
webcams?
Yeah.
For some equipment for digital programming, such as video camera, tripod, green screen type of stuff. So it's been relatively small in number, but it's been at least, I think, 3 in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I would say that we don't need to do anything to this now. The other thing on here, the library sales, that $26, maybe, for next year, staff, you could take a look at, do we even need to sell this stuff? Just give it away. The amounts are insignificant. And the money right now, the city is buying these things, and then when they sell them, the money goes into the library trust fund, which is kind of a strange.
What are we selling?
Go ahead, Katie.
So the library has, we sell to patrons items that are most requested. So headphones for use on our computers, tote bags, because most places don't have plastic bags anymore, so for people to carry their books they check out, as well as USB flash drives. I'm going to say this, and don't quote me on it. I believe when I started, when we were still part of the city, the money for purchasing those items came out of the trust, and then anything, basically the markup, the profit, everything that was taken from the sales came back into the trust.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I feel like that's an inkling in the back of my mind. Since the transition and COVID and all these other things, we've just been using our supplies budget, as John just stated, it's very minimal. We do still get a lot of requests for the headphones. There are still things we do sell. We were closed and not really available to the public. I imagine you're going to see a higher increase in sales this year. Probably still not much, so to speak, but the reason that we provide those things is because they're things people ask for, and we do have to pay for them out of pocket. So that was just a way to kind of recoup and have that go back into the library. So that's just the history, as far as I know it, of that situation.
So maybe some point later, on early next FY, by the end of the calendar year, you guys can come up with what you would like to do that's easiest for you to handle, because the money is just not material. The other things in that upper section, I should have covered that first. The trust dividends, I guess somebody donated some oil wells to us, or we're getting dividends, royalties. That's not a tremendous amount of money. The other revenue, which varies from like $16,000 to $18,000 a year, the reimbursements from that grant are expected, they come out of the state, and apparently those are expected to go on for some period of time, and no one knows for sure. But anyway, we get $16,000, $18,000 a year. That's our main source of revenue for the trust fund. The investment earnings, they tried to explain it to me, and I took accounting in grad school, but I didn't understand what they said. But anyway, we sometimes that number is positive, and it's positive by several $1,000s, the investment earnings. And I think the negatives are, I'm sure it works out just fine, but we get a couple $1,000 a year from investment earnings.
Are you here to speak to that? Oh, wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay. Michelle Collette, Revenue Manager with the city. So the way the investment earnings work is every fiscal year we accrue the interest from the following month into the right fiscal year to capture it, but then we reverse it because we're accounting entry, basically. By the end of the fiscal year, you'll see the true interest that is earned in the fund. You're seeing the negatives now because it's the reversal of that entry we did at the end of the fiscal year. So the $1,000, you'll basically see the interest start flowing in. We were behind in accruing some of the interest to your guys' fund, to all the funds for the first 6 months. So it'll turn positive the next report.
Sure.
You get. Yeah.
So for what I was able to find indicated it's about, $3,000, $4,000 a year at the most?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not a huge amount. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just note, since I am here to talk, that the last line on your trust worksheet, that's really what you guys have available to program towards future uses. I'm sure you know that, but this is the first time I've been to one of these meetings, so I thought I would give you some background on it. And yes, these funds are budgeted in the capital improvement budget, which goes initially in May and then June. So that's the easiest way to budget the use if you decide there's a future use you want to add to your list of projects here. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much.
I did kind of want to have a question there, kind of regarding what John was saying about the sales. If that is something that you guys would be amenable to, I would definitely prefer to use money from the trust to purchase those items that we sell, and then it'll make more sense as far as money coming out and then it getting replenished plus whatever our profit is from that. This is kind of the first year or so I've had the ability to really kind of think it through and have more information. So if I can address the board when that comes up, I will just request funding to replenish those supplies. And then that might look a little different going forward.
Okay, yeah, if you could give us just, again, this is not time sensitive. Later this year, just give us an estimated annual budget that you would be buying.
Yeah, it's probably going to be less than $400.
That's, okay.
Yeah. If it's okay to address you guys about this, since we are on the trust, this came up to me right after I submitted the packet for you guys to see. But that project you funded last year, the digital signage, so the new TVs and the PCs, due to supply chain issues, they're now kind of getting ready to install those fixtures. They've done the walkthrough, and they did find a need for more equipment, more cabling that we previously were not aware of due to some of the placement of some of these things. So I would like to request, and I asked Zach if I could ask for the request, even though it wasn't on there, and he said it was fine. It's going to be approximately $1,300 for everything else that I need, and I do have that an itemized list. And I was going to ask if I could request up to $2,000 for the remainder in case there is more cost increase, because they're trying to buy it soon, so it should be about that. But there might be a little bit more cost with some of the PC equipment because it is back ordered and hard to get a hold of.
So are you asking for a total of 3,300 or a total of 2,000?
I'm asking to approve up to $2,000.
Okay.
Currently, my amount is $1,317.93, but again, that's an estimate, and it could be a little more, so I'd rather have a little wiggle room up to $2,000.
I would move that we pass a resolution to allow Katie to spend up to $2,000 to complete this project.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved, 4-0.
Thank you.
What, I just have a quick question regarding, you know, what we're able to do with the funds. Like what, if for, say we wanted to establish like a scholarship out of it, is that something that we have the power to do?
As I understand it, if we request a budgeted item for that purpose, it just goes through the process and gets done, yeah.
Okay.
But that has to go clear, as I understand it, it has to go through city and council for approval of the budget. And that is in their CapEx and budgeting process. Am I right?
Full authority for you to be able to do that. I would have to look into I don't know that a scholarship, I don't know if these funds were specific for more capital items in nature, or if a scholarship is something that would be an allowable cost.
And so like capital items, when we talk about that, that's like infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have used this for some staffing too, I know, when times got tighter. So I would think that probably a scholarship is an option.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's
But
just,
it might have to be obviously board approval,
Uh-huh.
have some sort of library
Okay.
functionality.
But could I ask you, you do a better job than I do, could you explain the youth services and the library book supplemental accounts?
Yeah, so the library book supplemental, so at one point, there were two different funding sources coming into the library to buy books. One was coming from our public facilities funds, which are funds that are collected and related to growth. So we justified using those funds because there's always population growing in the city. And so we kind of made that catalyst to use that funding for books. It used to be about 200,000, and I think it increased up to 250,000 with the LSNS contract. And so that supplemental one was just that's one that's been carrying on since back in the day. It was used to kind of offset the costs as well. But since that new contract is in place with LSNS, I think you guys have been spending more of the money there. So it's just one of those lingering projects that's out there. So you could choose to close it and put that money towards something else, or you could buy some more books out of there. And the youth services, I think was a newer one that you guys budgeted. I'm not sure that I have the detail with me on if there was any particulars on what that was for. Just based on the description, I would say something related to youth in the library. I know that's probably about as much as you could gather, so.
Hence the need to go through this next year and clean it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the way these items work is they just keep carrying forward in perpetuity. Unlike the operating budget for the city, they like drop off at each fiscal year. This is tied to a capital fund, and those funds just carry forward until they're exhausted or until the purpose is no longer. We close them out, reallocate the funds to something better.
Okay. Thank you very much.
John, prior to LS&S, it seemed like we never had enough money to buy enough materials or to improve technology. And so we did used to approve money out of this for items. In fact, at one time, we were afraid we were going to use it up.
Oh, wow.
So we were counting on this to help us make up for some deficits. But since the 250,000 came in with the contract, we haven't had to do that.
That's very interesting, Ron. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, anything else on this subject? No? Okay, Katie, would you like to give the director's report?
So in January, the library hosted the annual Lion Dance performance by the Three Treasures Cultural Society on Tuesday, January 25th, and it was attended by 75 people. It's been a pretty popular program, and we were excited to welcome the Three Treasures back this year. We had 115 plant lovers and gardeners attend our Succulent Swap that was held on Saturday the 15th. And we are going to offer this program again in July, and it will be offered adjacent to our new beautiful pocket park, which is full of succulents. So we're very excited about that. The library also launched a puzzle exchange program on January 29th. So these are donated puzzles. It's a take one, leave one kind of system. So patrons can come take a puzzle, do it, bring it back, or if they have puzzles to donate, they can just leave them for other people to enjoy. On launch day, we started with 150 puzzles, and 31 people came on that day, and we currently have 56 puzzles. So over almost 100 of them went that first day, which is awesome. And we've had, since I wrote this on Friday or Thursday of last week, we've actually had a donation of at least another 10 puzzles, which is really great. The Literacy Services Department was awarded $52,000 as a grant to provide the English as a Second Language service by the California State Library. And this is kind of an addendum to our existing literacy grant, and we are working on an implementation timeline, staffing, schedule of classes, et cetera. And we're really excited because it's something that many patrons request and we see as a big need in the community, so we're happy to be able to provide that. With the support of our Polaris team, Polaris is our library software, and the Spanish translator on staff, we are now happy to offer Spanish language notification options for holds and overdue items via text and email. So now when patrons go to fill out their library card application or look at their account online, they're able to select their language preference, which is awesome. We are currently working on the 2021 annual library report, so that progress is underway. Our recruitment has closed for our 3/4-time Library Associate 2 in customer service. And we are reviewing resumes and scheduling interviews. We've done a few interviews already, so we're excited to fill that position. And then one of our new library associates, Amy Villanueva, started her master's in library science at San Jose State University in January, bringing our total staff pursuing their degrees up to 4 people, which is really great. Also, too, as a shout out to our friends at the library, their bookshop is now open until 4 o'clock on Saturdays because they have extra volunteers, and they have increased their marketing efforts for their monthly half-price sale. And in January, they made over $800 at the sale over the 2 days they were open, and they are starting to advertise in the community page of the Union Tribune. So that was pretty cool.
Katie, one question on the grant, the $52,000 grant. Over what time frame are you planning to? Does the grant specifically say you have to spend it over in a certain period of time, or how does that work?
Yes, it does, and I have to look the details up because right now, as you guys we talked about in the last meeting, we're talking about the infrastructure grant as well, and I have like 3 grants in my brain, and I don't know which one is related to which timeline. I want to say that it has to be expended in the next year. That's standing out to me. Don't quote me on that. I will take a look at my notes and tell you. But I do know that we're looking to start implementation around summer or fall as far as getting the classes up and running.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, would it be possible to maybe have someone from the literacy services talk to us just to bring us up to date? That's one of my pet projects. I just am so impressed with that program, and it's nice to know what's going on right now as opposed to maybe a year ago and so forth. So I'd appreciate that. It doesn't have to be next time, but whenever you can fit it in.
Certainly, I'll speak with them and see when they can come and speak at one of the meetings. I'll get it on the agenda.
The other thing that I wanted to put on the record, I am so pleased to see these master's degrees, because for those of you who lived through the conversion from the city to LS&S, one of the biggest issues is the critics were saying we were going to lose people with master's degrees, and it appears to me we're gaining people with master's degree, and so I'm very happy you brought that forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, Katie. Why don't we transition to the vision? So I believe we have a public comment, or do you want to do it first, Zach, or?
However you want to do it, yeah, we do have a comment. Let's take
Okay,
Mr. Anderson's comment first.
Great.
before I pull up the presentation.
okay. If you'd like to come speak, Jack.
Ready?
Yep, ready for you.
Madam President and trustees, my name is Jack Anderson. I'm an Escondido resident, and in retirement, I am the chairman of the Library Foundation board. Before I retired, I worked for the city for many, many years. In fact, was involved with completing the building that we're currently in 1981. So I love the library, and I would love for it to be improved physically and provide better service. If you'll just allow me, I thought I would take a moment and give you a couple of foundation updates, things that we've been doing. With the city, we helped upgrade the security system in the library about 18 months ago. We provided funds for the upgrading of the audiovisual system in the Turrentine room, and just now it's being able to be used a little bit because of COVID, so, but very needed improvement for that. Under a joint powers agreement between the city and Palomar College, our foundation contributed funds to upgrade some library facilities at the Escondido Palomar campus. We had a sneak preview about a month ago out there with the college president. They had hoped to be open by the end of January, but because of Omicron, I think perhaps the end of February, they would be open, and the effort will be to encourage more citizens to use that as a Escondido branch library. The other thing that we did was purchase some new tablets for the children's library, for the learning kinds of tablets, and it about increased the inventory of tablets by about 40%. So it was important for the library services and the children. And lastly, and many of you have noticed this, but we have completed a mural on the west-facing wall of the library. And we were talking about that, that wall has been blank and white for 40 years. And so it now is an attraction. It's a fine piece of downtown art and will bring notice to the library. And you'll be receiving a formal invitation, but on Saturday, March 12th at 9:30, there will be a ribbon-cutting dedication unveiling of the mural. The garden has been essentially completed. If you take a moment to walk out there, it's really special. And the mural is entitled Escondido's Vision. And we really felt like the library, what it provides, what it has provided over history, represents that vision of our community for people to be learning, to be growing, and to strengthen the community. So that's a little bit of an update of what the foundation has been doing. I received a note from Carolyn about your meeting today, and said that I would be here. I'm very interested in what future improvements we can make to the library facility that we have. And I thought it would be wise, and John and I spoke on Saturday with my fun-loving grandchildren in the background, but about a little bit of history, and it's important to understand the history of our library as we look at what the future vision might be for the building. Again, the building was opened in 1981. In 2001, the city had completed a complete brand-new library design for the site, and the effort around that time was to seek a state grant, and there were grant funds available. The voters had passed a large sum of money, and the first phase was that in 2001. Unfortunately, the city had acquired all of the property on the site except for the historic building, which is now the funeral home. It's owned by the city and leased to the funeral home. And we were in escrow, and it had been a challenging acquisition, but we didn't have clear title, and the state said we're not eligible for the grant. So we got kicked out of the process. A couple of years later, there was another round of applications, less money. We were ready then in it for the same project, but because there was less money, our needs weren't considered as important as other communities, and we lost out on that one as well. In about 2008 or 9, and you're talking about the library trust funds, but our foundation, along with the trustees, secured an architect to come up with a design to expand the library on the property. Not a whole new library, we were going to create a campus. So there'd be a new building there at the corner of Broadway and 2nd, actually with the entrance facing towards downtown. And that was working. We actually had, city council had supported that process with the use of library trust funds. And we actually did a tiny bit of fundraising, but the point being is we had a workable plan, but it would require a public vote. It was maybe in the neighborhood of $15 million or something to build that building, that portion of the property, and create the campus environment, probably remove the Mathis Center so the parking would be up on grade. City council had been part of the process, and then the council said, no, we need a new library in Grape Day Park. So that moved us to a different square on the game board. So at this point, we're looking at opportunities to do things with the current building. And in about 2010 or 11, there was some remodeling done on the interior. Carpeting, signage, furniture, there was circulation desk and different things like that were moved, and so some improvements were made. So those things have been, there's always been an effort to keep the current building as capable as possible. So anyway, that's a little history from the perspective that I had as being part of the city's team on that, and then now as a foundation member. But our board hasn't acted on this specifically, but we are very interested in keeping the library as strong and as fresh to the community as possible, so that its usability is an attraction. And we want that mural to be the big signboard to bring people in and then have the services that they really can use and are valuable to them. So we're supportive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about what we're doing, but just know that our foundation is very interested in what that future vision might be and want to be part of that, making those decisions. So, I'll be around, so.
Great. Well, thanks, Jack. I really appreciate you coming. The history was extremely enlightening to me because I wasn't even alive in 1981. So, Virginia, did you have questions for Jack?
Yeah, I'm. Thank you for sharing the 40-year history because I didn't know most of that. I was just curious if someone was to ask you today, what would you envision the library looking like in 10 years from now? Not, not saying the current building, but like if you had the perfect picture to make the perfect library for Escondido, what would it look like for you?
Well, if we're limited to the current building, and I have spoken to Dara extensively about this, but if we're limited to the current building, I would say we would make the first level more usable for a variety of kinds of services. One of the things that we discovered over time with some of these remodelings is that because there aren't major stacks on the second floor, it was not structurally sound to handle the kinds of stacks that we have on that first floor if we were to try and move them up and change service areas. But I think if we were to be creative about how we use that downstairs space, we think the business center is important. I think that's important for the community. Actually, the foundation was a part of installing that with some computers and that kind of thing a number of years ago. I didn't bring it up because it's old history, but so those kinds of things would be important. We've been interested in helping out with things like charging stations and those areas where there might be small groups that could gather. We at one time had worked with the staff, this was before LS&S was here, about the possibility of even movable partitions in the turntime room, so when it was not being used for other activities, children's or performance things, you could create small study group gathering areas, and they would be movable. And so flexibility is important. When we had looked at building the new addition on the corner of 2nd and Broadway, it was going to have space for gatherings and a coffee shop and things like that, so it would make it a place for people, students, what have you, to come, small business people, a couple business folks, come and do interviews, those kinds of things. But that, flexibility for that. So those are the kinds of things it means it's a morphing kind of thing, not fixed. We have, a lot of walls that are fixed and tough to move, and then the more you use the electronics, it used to be a lot of wires. Now I think Bluetooth and Wi-Fi would really be important to have the best possible resources available.
Thank you.
Great. Anything, John?
So I'm not going anywhere, so if you have questions as we go forward, I'm more than happy to be part of it, as our foundation board is.
Well, as I understand this grant, the most we could hope to get out of it, even if we got down into the 20% level instead of the 50% level, is something like $13 million, less if we're at the 50% level. That would be basically enhancing the current structure, because there's no way in the world we can build a new structure for $12 million. It's so that's what we're looking at
For now.
for now.
One of the interesting challenges when the building was built and designed in 1980, 79 or 80, energy was an issue, and so the lighting was put on top of the stacks, reflecting up off the ceiling and down to the stacks.
Oh, how
And that was, pretty good technology at that point. Well, you don't need the tall stacks as much. The light isn't very good on the lower level because of that. So it maybe wasn't as effective. But so there is some cost to revise that kind of a lighting scheme and the stacks themselves.
Yeah, just moving the stacks in general, you've got to redo all the lighting.
You got lighting, you got the floor coverings, you got all that kind of stuff so it does add up.
Yeah. Okay.
At one point, Elmer Cameron was very involved with the Friends of the Library, and Elmer and I talked about we want to get a new library in our lifetime, and Ron shares that thought, I think. But anyway, we just still want to just keep our facilities because the better they are, the more they're used, the more the demand for a new library is before us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we're limited from what you remember on the engineering of the existing building. We're limited on what we can do weight-wise on the second floor.
I believe that's the case. That was
Okay.
what we were told before, and that's why we basically planned to do a whole new library, on the site, because of some of the limitations you just couldn't do. You can't remodel that building anymore, kind of thing, and so that was, and my memory's still relatively strong, but I'm not an engineer, but that's what we were told.
So we'd be looking, it would behoove us to look more at enhancements for the best connectivity, electronics,
Right.
possibly something to do with smaller meeting rooms, but it would probably, space-wise, we'd probably be looking at doing it on the second floor versus the first, just because of, we've got no place else to put the stacks.
Well, and the other challenge, the turntime room is a wide open space, so
Yeah.
modular movables could be good, but the other hand, it moves then a lot of need for staff to be ready and available upstairs, not just the children's area. So it creates some staffing issues, and you've got segmented areas where you would have library users. So if you could make the arrangements with consolidating the stacks and have that on the first level, you've got the bulk of your staff down there. So it makes managing everything that's going on much more simple.
Okay.
Great.
Jack, thank you for this update. It's really good. I've been in this almost as long as Jack, and I hate to admit it, but I have almost given up hope for a brand new library in my lifetime, because we've been fooling around with this a long time. And I think we've been neglecting a little bit our existing building, et cetera, because we thought the new library was coming. This grant gives us an opportunity to at least bring this library up to the standard that we would like it to be, or near we would like it to be, because I just don't think we can keep putting that off because we think a new library is coming. I think maybe in 50 years a new library is coming, but we need to take advantage of this. I think the Turrentine room is misused. I think that it's a big space, and I'd love to see what you've just described with the portable walls, and they have some great ones now.
Sure.
I mean, it's so much better. We should be attracting the community there for these small meetings and even medium-sized meetings, because when people come there, they see how great a library it is. They go out and sell it to their friends, to the community. I think that's one area we really need to look at very strongly. And then the aesthetics, anything to attract people, signage. If it's pleasant, people will come. I think our library is fabulous right now, but I think it can be even much greater if we can take advantage of this grant. And then we're going to have to take a look at some of the basics to see that we don't totally overlook them. AC, lighting, roofing. We may have to take a look at that, because we can't redo the library and forget the basics.
The infrastructure needs to be,
It needs to be evaluated.
building can be cared for.
Evaluated at least. But I think we have to change our thinking from, well, we're going to get a new library, so we'll live with what we have. I think we've got to go for it right now.
Great. With that, I think we'll segue into the discussion on the vision. So thank you so much, Jack.
Sure thing, thank you.
Katie, it looked like you wanted to speak. Did you want to say something?
My understanding, just to clarify, is that there's a certain percentage, in fact, the vast majority of the infrastructure grant that, due to the stipulations of the grant, must be slated for those kinds of true infrastructure, AC, plumbing, making things ADA compliant, roofing, making things comply with current standards as far as just the basics. And then, of course, the vision is more of like what can we really, like the small meeting rooms. But I think that the specifics of the grant is that that would be kind of the main focus of where their funding would want to be. I just wanted to, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So I'll use the clicker, Zach, and we'll get started. So I think we'll start with Virginia.
Okay, what am I reading?
Yeah, if you just want to tell us a little bit about what your vision is, and yeah.
Do I have 2 slides, Zach?
Yeah, you
Okay. So I just gave a brief overview of what is important that I think is in our new library, and just I vote to have a centralized library with the ability for pickup and drop-off locations throughout Escondido. When I first joined the board and I had my tour with Dara, I talked to her about this idea of like Uber for books, you know, and I had told her that I would look into that, and I have been giving her some information on that, but that's kind of more of a long-term project. And then just as mentioned in the last board meeting, it would be great to partner with a charter school or another nonprofit business to bring in the younger community into the library to use the space, which is what similar to what the San Diego downtown library has. Definitely need a hangout area with coffee and then meeting rooms for public use. In my recommendations, I also asked Katie to give hers. And I think these are Katie's. Katie, would you like to speak to these, or would you like me to cover it?
I can speak to it. I mean, really, it looks like Virginia and I had very similar ideas. And again, I do make the caveat that I'm kind of entrenched. So what I think and what the general public thinks. But things I've seen that I have heard patrons talk to me about, or things I've seen at other libraries that have worked wonderfully, specifically are to have at least a hold pickup location or a place where folks can, similar to the book vending machines, I believe San Diego County has a couple, one of them is in Fallbrook and I want to go check it out, where it's basically an integrated system where the person can look up a book, place it on hold, and then it'll come up for them, like it'll get delivered there for them to pick up at a later time, but there's also a small selection of books available right then at that machine that they can check out right then. So I think something like that would be very helpful. At least having a place where people can pick up their holds in the East Valley, because I think that that's been the major issue, is just not having a place to come get your books or return your books in the East Valley. So that's something I don't want to look into. Also, too, like Virginia was saying, kind of like a Grubhub or Uber type delivery system. Oceanside Public Library did this during COVID, and it was so popular that they still do it. So there's specific zip codes within Oceanside that if you live in those zip codes, you can get your library books delivered right to your door. I think that that's been incredibly great for them, and I think that it would be something that would be very useful here to our patrons as well. And it would kind of go hand in hand with homebound services that we have had requests for, but that would also allow it to be pretty much anyone could request. So I think that that's handy. And then also, as Ron mentioned, as Jack mentioned, as Virginia mentioned, having study rooms, having small meeting places for people to meet. I would want them to be equipped with smart whiteboards so that if there was a group working on a project, they could utilize that. And then also kind of like up here where you have a screen that is equipped with Zoom, so that if someone was doing an interview or some kind of work call, they could do that all in a private room. So those are the things I thought would be the most useful.
Great. All right. Next is, more from Virginia. Oh, and Katie.
Oh, okay. Bilingual offerings are very important. We have a more than 50% Latino population here in Escondido, and we are working on increasing our Spanish language reach, but I think that that's a very important aspect. Potentially pop-up libraries at community events, so not just having an informational booth, but having a small collection of books that we could check out right there on our tablets or laptops. And then we've talked about this before, but having either a technology classroom with computers that are already set up for learning classes for digital literacy, so how to use Microsoft Office, how to write a resume, how to use Facebook or use Zoom. We could also potentially parlay that into some kind of mobile technology classroom with laptops. So we could utilize existing Turrentine room for something like that. But it is something that we've had a lot of people asking about, is just basic computer classes, or specifically targeted for seniors, specifically targeted for people who are trying to help with their unemployment, either filing for unemployment or doing job applications. So that's something. And then the last one I put on there is having a full-time social worker on staff. And that is something we're actually working with the park rangers and the social workers that work with them. So we are having that more incorporated as it is into our offerings. And I think that's really important, especially working with some of our folks that come in that need assistance. So having someone dedicated to helping them with those things, and so we can give them resources, but they also have someone on site that they can make an appointment with. So.
Cool.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay, great. Next is Ron.
Well, I said most of the things that I recommended when I talked before. You know, the library probably, I can't think of anything in our city that draws anywhere near the number of patrons a day. So we can use the library to do a lot of things other than just traditional library things, because we are drawing more people there that go back out into our community than anywhere else. And so that's why I think we've got to make it very appealing. And it is already appealing. I don't want to say it's not. I listed all the stuff Katie talked about with regard to maintenance. You can't do the fancy stuff and forget the roofing and the plumbing, etc. I'm really, really into as I said before, the public rooms. I think that we could be the place that a lot of people have committee meetings, small meetings. That brings them in, and that then would be what they would take away. And, you know, a lot of people in our community, they don't really know how good a library we have because they just don't get there. And if we had those meeting rooms, I think people would come, and then when they went away, they would be out in the community telling other people how great a library we have. I think the technology is the new thing. When I was just in the library an hour ago, and I see more people on tablets and computers and so forth. It's the new paradigm, and we've got to bring it as ours up to standard as quick as we can, so that we are offering these people the latest and the best. That brings them in. And so I think technology would be something we would want to assess. I don't know what the grant would allow you as far as getting an architectural firm or a consultant or what, but there must be some people in this industry. Much like in the school industry, there's lots of school architects who are fabulous. And there must be library architects that, if the grant would allow us to work with one, it would probably open our eyes to a lot of opportunities.
More from you, Ron? The Turrentine room?
Well, I said that before. I think the Turrentine room, and this happens in a lot of public buildings. You have a room that kind of becomes part storage, part this, part that, and it's really not used the way it was designed. And so that's a big space. And there are probably be occasions where we would need the whole space for a meeting, like when we had the LS&S meetings. I mean, that place was full. But we need to be able to section it off so that it can be used for small meetings. And so I think that room is probably the room that we may want to change the most.
Great. All right, John.
Okay. When I was out looking at different libraries, went to Oceanside, went to Carlsbad, there is Carlsbad had greeters, volunteer greeters, and that was a nice touch. If you weren't sure of where you wanted to go in the building, it was a nice touch. I'm seeing a real need for smaller meeting rooms. They have to have at least one glass wall, and you can figure that out. But that would be an incredibly useful thing for people, small groups. Katie, just out of curiosity, the Turrentine room, how often does it, how many groups actually fill it up or even fill it to 50%? How often does that happen?
Well, when we do our own programs, like I'm going to use the Second Saturday Concert Series as an example, we usually have between 50 and 100 folks in there. So that's the max capacity in that room is 150. So I'd say that when we especially have some of our larger performers or monthly concerts, we fill it. A lot of our other stuff like our story times or our book clubs or things like that, you're looking at closer to anywhere from 20 to 30 people, which is about half that size. Members of the public, it really depends on what they're doing. When we have people who do lectures from the Graybill or some of the other medical, I've seen about 50 people in there. So again, it's about half the size, but that's just my anecdotal, like off the top of my head memory.
Right, okay. Well, if we can't carve some space out on the first floor, we've got one place left. And I'm just following along Ron's logic, and I think it's sound. If we carved out, let's say, one wall of the Turrentine room and put in small meeting rooms with doors, that could have screens, maybe not all of them, but some of them would have screens, and a small table and 2 to 4 chairs. We would, I think, find those used a lot. And, having a meeting room, once in a great while we use it for 150 people, so let's not touch it. We need that space. I don't think that's the philosophy that we need to follow. We had a focus group, I think it was the second one, was out in the East County Community Center, where the old library used to be. There was a meeting room down the hall and back on the east side. And I swear, there was like 12 of us in there, and we were lost in one corner. This room could easily hold 150 people. I mean, there are other meeting rooms in the city that maybe some of these events could, just because it's a library event, does that 1 or 2 events a year, do we keep the Turrentine room just for, the way it is, just for that? Maybe that's not a good way to think. So I would definitely like to see more individual rooms. That requires HVAC, heating. It's not cheap. The next one down, study or reading spaces. And I hope I'm not getting too far out, but I used to travel a lot, and I always wanted to fly business class, but unless I had a lot of miles, I usually didn't, because my employer, that cheap, wouldn't pay for it. But if you walk down the aisle of an aircraft through the business section, when you look to your right or left, you can actually see them. Okay, but otherwise, you don't know they're there. It's not like the regular seating. And you could set up, there must be furniture that's available now, I can't believe that it's not, that we could put in our existing reading area, if you want to call it that, at the library, which would, we could create, let's say, up to 40 reasonably private spaces for someone, but it's just furniture, it's not a wall. And you just make sure that you have the electrical hookups, USB, whatever, and lighting in there. And I think people would really appreciate that, because you're not having somebody, because the current rooms, you're exposed. You're just sitting like being in a basketball court reading. We're doing the best we can with the space we have and the furniture we have, but I think if we would to change that, we could make it a much more appealing area, and it wouldn't use, in other words, we wouldn't be taking space away from something. We would just be enhancing what the use of the space we have. Lockers, the idea of having books delivered to your door is great. Because they're especially if you use a delivery service, I don't think it's going to be that much money. That could be looked at. I'd like to see how that worked out elsewhere. A couple of years ago, my first year as a trustee, the city was looking at spending, I think it was $400,000 for one of those vending machines, where you go in, push the button, and the book, the little teeny forklift would go down the little aisle and pull the book out and bring it out to you. So by the time you get through paying for that and the maintenance on the machine, that's a lot of money. But lockers, where when your hold comes in, you're emailed or texted a code, you go in, put the code in, boom, there's your book. And you could also return the book to a central locker in the same facility. We could have one of those out in the East County Community Center, and I'm sure there's other places around the city where something like that could be done, and the expense would be, I think, more in line with what we have to work with. Okay, and the last one, this really doesn't involve spending a lot of money. It's more of just a getting the word out, and now that I think about it, it really doesn't belong in a grant. So I'll leave that off. That'll be something we can talk about in the 5-year plan. There you have it.
Okay, great. And then it looks like we would also go ahead.
Oh, that's the new library. I don't know if we wouldn't want to talk about that because that's not our intent today. This is just something I put on there.
Well, so I think it was part of the intent today.
Okay.
So if you...
All right, the multi-use facility, I really like the idea of having something that would incorporate a senior center or a child care, what do you call it? What do they call it for little kids? Preschool. Okay, you could even have a gym, but then I don't know. That probably getting out of field a little bit. But you could have other, daycare centers. You could have other things located in the building. It wouldn't share the entrance with the library, but it would allow us access to more funds and ways to take care of a lot of state requirements. And if we can incorporate some private funding, in other words, if you had there's some pretty well-to-do preschools around North County that might be willing to agree to a long-term lease or possibly some upfront funding for a better lease rate. But there's a lot of things that could be done to lessen the city's financial outlay for a multi-use facility. And I saw something down in San Diego years ago where there was a senior center, it was a private thing, that was co-located in the same building with a preschool. And I think it was I don't think I'd call it senior daycare, but you could go drop, somebody off, mom or daddy off for activities or whatever. And the seniors, just having the visibility, being able to watch kids play, they loved it. There's a lot of synergy into something like that. The coffee snack shop, indoor, outdoor seating, I think that's a way to get people to come in, especially the younger set. And that, of course, could be off the lobby. There's I guess you would call it an upscale snack shop that's right outside the door of the Carlsbad Library. It's really nice. Food's good. So I think that's a must. A library, there's a source of information in different medias. I think I copied this out of a book. As well as there's a repository of books. In other words, a place you can get information, and we kind of have that. We're getting closer to that with all the e-books and audiobooks and other things that are available now. But if someone comes in and they need to be able to sit down and access some information, we ought to be able to help them, as well as, check out books. And I've already talked about the small meeting rooms and private study areas. I think this really would set this would make the building very appealing. I can tell you what, when my kids were smaller, I could have really used a couple hours at a small private study area just to get out of the house. Multi-purpose rooms for collaborative endeavors. In other words, we could offer some crafting classes. There's all kinds of different things that people are interested in that we just don't have the space for right now. We certainly can't get into woodworking. The insurance will kill you. But there's a lot of things that could be done. And I can't remember which library. I think it was Carlsbad again. They have a play area, and there's no reason we can't have toys. We could have a Lego room. We could have all kinds of things where the parent could come in and grab a book themselves, take the kids down to the play area, and they could sit there and watch them while the kids, read while the kids play. If you go down to the mall now, I think at either end they have an area that's cordoned off. You can get in it from two directions, and you can see worn out adults sitting there watching their kids crawl all over things. So this is just a play off of that, where the parent can go get what they need, and the kids can have fun, and of course the toys can be things they can learn with. And the rule of thumb, and I keep reading this all over, even today, even with all the electronic things that are available versus just a stack of books, that a library in square foot should encompass 0.5 of half a square foot for each citizen, which puts us at less than 50% of the size that we should be. That's it.
Okay. Well, great. So I will say that, and I think you mentioned that, John. I wanted to hear from you before I gave my input. It sounds to me that we have kind of two visions, right? One is short term, to extend the life of the library that we currently have and fill it with good programming, new modular meeting rooms. And then also to expand accessibility, right? So making sure that we have locations that individuals can go to outside of the downtown area where they can access library services. So whether that be Palomar, whether that be lockers or a delivery service, I think that all is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's something that we can definitely pursue. The second piece of, I think, our vision is the new library. I think we're all kind of on the same page of this is what we'd like, right? I think in order for us to maintain services, grow our services, and then better serve the public, it's something that we're going to need in, the not so near future, but near from a perspective of construction doesn't happen, in 5 years or 10 years, and it's going to take a lot to get a new library. And with that new library, I think what we'd like to see are partnerships incorporated. So Virginia, you mentioned charter school. John, you mentioned a senior center. So making it, when we talk to the council about this infrastructure, grant, making them see that, this is an absolute necessity. It's not a nice to have. If we're going to continue to serve the public, we absolutely need to refurbish our facility. On the other hand, though, that does not at all, by any means, prevent us from pursuing a new facility. And I think when I speak to Joanna about what we came up with today, I'd really like to get her input as to how we can best communicate that to the council, right? I think economic development is a huge push right now, and saying that the future library can be part of that, but also be part of serving our community with the way, things are going from, a homeless perspective, from a growing senior population perspective, and then also, child care. And there's a lot of things that the library can, I think, help the community in partnering with that will provide a comprehensive approach to city issues. So I hope I summarized that well. I think that we're all kind of on the same page as to what we see for the future. And I think that I've gotten a great amount of information that I can use to kind of build that, I don't want to say it's a pitch, but it's really, our reasoning to the council for the necessity of the infrastructure project, but then also the necessity of a new library, in the not too distant future. Great. I'm really glad we did this exercise. It's very exciting. And I did invite some of the other library groups. I know that we will have representation from the Friends of the Library at the March 2nd meeting. So and Elmer's actually going to be the one to attend. So I will talk to him about just some, things that we'd like his support on, and then the other groups too are interested as well. So hopefully we can get some good representation there. I think all of us should go if we can be there, just to give our perspective. And I think it's something extremely exciting, and I hope that we can do both. Okay. Did anybody have any other questions or? No? Okay, great. Then I think the last part of our meeting today is to discuss ways, I guess, that we have either been involved in the library over the last 2 weeks, because it was only 2 weeks ago that we met, or ways that we've advocated for it, or anything like that. Virginia, would you like to go first?
Sure. I have not visited the library in the past 2 weeks, but I drive by the Succulent Garden and it looks awesome, and just wanted to mention that.
Ron?
The only thing I've done is I've been in the library a couple of times, and I'm just very pleased what I see. I think the things we talked about here will really enhance, but in no way do I want people to think we don't have a very good thing going now. I think it's good. Katie, about 2 years ago, we passed I don't know whether we call it a resolution or something. It had to do with board member attendance. I think we need to take another look at that, because the people that we represent aren't represented if we're not here. And so
There's something in the bylaws about that.
yeah, I think it was three
Absences
Three absences.
something, but
in a year.
it's certainly nothing personal, but I think that we as a board have the responsibility to enforce that, I guess is the word.
Zach, I'm not up on that and the rules regarding it. Is that something you can access and let us know? Thank you.
I can look into the bylaws and get back to you and bring
But
it.
Thank you.
I've got the bylaws here.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
perfect.
so the bylaws state that if there are, I think it's 3 consecutive absences, John, but if you want to,
I don't think it's consecutive.
it's not, okay. Then the board votes whether to expel the trustee. So that, I mean, if we all want to take a look at the,
I thought I had the bylaws.
oh, you don't, okay. Zach, could you just let us know?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
We can put the item on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, great, great. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Ron.
Well, I just think the people need to be represented the way they should be.
Okay, great. John, did you want to give an update? On anything that you experienced at the library, or?
Well, I'm still stuck in the children's section. But in any case, I was at Education Compact's facility in the Salvation Army. They have a little office area that Salvation Army has donated for their use. And they're getting books from the library somehow. And I was just on a tour. And they're, the kids that they're helping are usually teenagers who are on probation because of gang activities. And so they're trying to get these kids to get their life back together and get back on track. And so I'm trying to find out how they're getting these books and to make sure one way or another that they're not paying for them.
Yeah.
So, but I'm working on that. But it's great to see that somebody at the library is getting books out to people who need them.
Definitely, that's great. I kind of wanted to just give a little bit of, not having anything to do with the library, but I've been on a commissioner on the Independent Redistricting Commission, and part of that has been for the public to identify communities of interest. And it's been extremely enlightening, where, people come forward and they say, this is my community, this is what matters to us. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking of how the library can, accommodate those communities of interest. And one of the things that kind of popped into my mind with the Latino community is they have a really interesting historical assessment of how immigrants came to Escondido. And so one of the things that I am going to do, and that Virginia will join me in, is when I tour the Pioneer Room, I was going to ask about if we take any oral histories. And if so, then maybe we can reach out to some of those community members to give some oral history of, how their families or whoever came to Escondido.
Actually, Caroline, if they would allow you to videotape.
That is a great idea. Absolutely. Oh, great. And I know that the Library of Congress takes personal stories like that as well, so maybe it's something we could partner with them on. But yeah, so I'll be doing that March 4th with Virginia. Great.
Yeah.
If that's it, then I'll adjourn this meeting. Yay.